Today's February 18th, 2023. Current Bitcoin price is $24,711.
Welcome to the BitBite podcast, your source for news and information about Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space. This podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not financial advice.
How's your weekend going, Rick?
Not too bad. I mean, my week was pretty crappy, so
Did you spend time at home at all?
yeah, several days.
Did you? Oh, man. That is no bueno.
Nope.
No bueno at all. So did you pay attention at all to the prices this week?
Did not pay attention to much of anything. So we were waiting on the CPI. What was the number?
So CPI came in at 6.4, which if you remember back in January for December's numbers, again, because this is always a lagging indicator, right? January's numbers came in at 6.5, which were January's numbers for December. Sorry. And then January's numbers in February came in at 6.4. So it dropped only by 0.1%. However, we're not seeing, and we kind of talked about this at the last episode, how they reweighted the scoring, like how everything was going to go into the basket.
Yeah.
So I think I'm kind of curious if CPI would have actually came out higher had that reevaluation of the basket not changed. Which, I mean, we kind of assumed that it should have, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the only reason I think that they would start changing that metric is to make it look better than it should.
Yeah, because, I mean, from what I've heard, and I wish I need to get some more data on this, but from what I've heard, that food prices are still increasing at a steady rate. Energy is the only thing that's I haven't seen significant drops in energy, but it has kind of seemed to kind of peter out. I mean, we're not seeing the prices that were before. However, I'm not seeing the drastic reductions either.
Yeah.
So the Fed, Jerome Powell was talking about, we had discussed this before too, where they were only talking about maybe another 50 basis points interest rate hike throughout the remainder of 2023. And they expected to have it done by the end of spring, or those were going to be done. However, Jerome Powell at his meeting this week said that because the job market was doing so hot that more interest rate hikes may be necessary for the remainder of the year. Which initially, everything going into, if you paid attention to the stock markets and everything else, everything was kind of waiting for these numbers to be announced. Everybody was kind of bated breath, holding on, waiting to see what was going to happen. Bitcoin actually dropped because we were right around the $25,000 mark, and then right before the CPI numbers were going to get announced, they dropped fairly significantly. Let me roll back on this just so I can get a better view of where we were. We had gone down to 23,000. Actually, okay. No, we had gone lower than that. We had gone down to 22,000.
Wow.
What day is this? February 15th, we were down at 22,000. So after the CPI numbers came out, then we went on ahead and we rallied up to 25,259. Then we went back down to 23,59. And right now we're riding at that $24,700 range, which I think was kind of interesting because at the same time, the DXY had actually increased, and we've always seen a reverse correlation. When the dollar goes strong, Bitcoin's been going down, and it's usually been treated the same as the regular stock market. We're starting to see something different kind of happen right now. I don't know how long that's going to play out, if it's a fluke or what have you, but I think that's kind of interesting to note.
Yeah, no, that is interesting.
And like I said, it could just be a fluke right now, but I think that's kind of interesting to see. I mean, and the Fed, speaking hawkishly again, 517,000 jobs in January that were reported that we talked about on the podcast. So then they're like, oh, well, then the market's going to get hot again. We need to raise interest rates even higher. I don't know how that's going to play out over the coming months. You know, we've heard all kinds of talks about recession. So we're going to be at, I have no idea. Like, there was this comment on this article that I've got here in front of me from Gregory Dacko, which I still don't know who he is, but he's a chief economist. He says that he predicts annual inflation will fall to 2.3% by the end of the year. And for core inflation, he predicts it'll fall to 2.8% by the end of the year.
And that sounds interesting. That's a very ballsy call. I don't know if I believe him.
No, it's optimistic for sure. I mean, we had talked about that. Remember, I think it was the last episode, we talked about how we had seen, I think it was going to be like the end of Q3, like inflation was going to be at 4% is what they were predicting on that prediction scale. And then by the time it got to the end of Q4 for this year, it was going to be like at 2.3% or something like that. Do you remember us talking about that?
Yeah.
I wonder what they're seeing that makes them think that that's going to happen.
You know what, though? I mean, I remember Janet Yellen saying that the inflation was going to be transitory in the beginning of 2021. So,
well, and at the same time, I mean, back when they started printing the stimulus, I also remember them saying we're not even thinking about raising interest rates until like 2025.
Yeah,
that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So no.
I caught, a lot of people are optimistic, and I just don't trust any of the mainstream sources. I don't know if it's because I'm just a contrarian or if I'm right, but maybe both.
And I don't think you should always have that like healthy criticism in mind, right? I mean, you always want to be kind of the opposite of what the major markets are doing.
Yeah.
I've never seen where that actually is beneficial to be like, oh yeah, no, they're right all the time. They're always wrong unless they're right. And so it always goes back to, you got to watch what the money's doing, right? That's really what you got to watch. Don't watch what they say. Watch where their investments are going.
You know, it seems like as far as investments go, if you're following the herd, like if you're doing what 80% of the general population is doing, you're probably doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That goes quite a ways back, especially like in the 2008, before that bubble happened, everyone was getting into real estate. You know, in the 2000s, everyone was getting into tech stocks. They were just buying tech companies because it was tech or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And anything that had a .com somewhere in the name of the company in some way, shape, or form, especially in that early 2000 bubble, right? Like, that was just nuts. Everything was just getting money.
Yep.
I think it was like pets.com ended up getting huge amounts of cash. Like, that's one of those stories. And they never had anything. There was never a product or anything like that.
Well, what did Mark Cuban sell? He sold some internet thing that's been long gone, but he turned that money into owning the Dallas Mavericks. So
Mark Cuban, what he had, from what I recall, was it was almost like an iHeartRadio kind of thing, where it was early days of the internet, and it was radio on the internet. That's what he did.
Yeah, that thing's not around, though.
No, I don't think it still exists. The only one of those early day, haymakers that kind of still existed from, I mean, obviously Amazon, which everybody thought was going to go to junk, like it was going to be worthless. And then Google's obviously still around, still a big one. Apple kind of came back during that time. And actually, Apple didn't come back until several years later, once Steve Jobs came back on. But then you also had actually PayPal. PayPal was one of those that was kind of in that early stages and kind of became still kind of a big force. And actually PayPal, realistically, when PayPal started, they were trying to do something very similar to what Bitcoin is. They were trying to make that remittance system within the web, but I don't think they ever had the foresight of the know-how to make it decentralized. Like, there was still too much. They wanted to keep it structured within the power realm, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, really, that's one of the beauties of Bitcoin is that you had to let it go. You had to just not try and control it and let it kind of become what it was going to become. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. Then the other thing that I have up here on screen is Brian Armstrong, if I can speak, who is the CEO of Coinbase. He urges Congress to pass clear legislation, crypto legislation, warning America risks losing financial hub status. And it's kind of funny because if you watched global legislation start to happen within the crypto space, for the longest time, the world was kind of waiting for America to make a decision. And then they were going to follow behind like whatever their crypto legislation was going to be, the regulations they were going to put in place. America still hasn't done it. So the world's trying to just come up with their own legislation on their own. So you've got a bunch of countries that are starting to do their own thing. We've seen it now, like China's got their hub happening in Hong Kong. There's one that's supposed to be happening in Great Britain in some way, shape, or form. I want to say France is about to do their own, and so is Spain. So they were waiting, and America's still dragging their feet. So, or the United States, I should say, because even Canada, for crying out loud, they've got ETFs and all kinds of things. So it's interesting to see. I don't know how that's all going to play out, but I mean, realistically, if completely kind of off topic, but not, you know who's got the second highest yield return on treasury bonds in the world right now?
Who's that?
El Salvador.
Wow.
Can you say why that is?
Bitcoin, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to for them. But yeah, their return rate is the second highest globally in the world right now.
Cool. That's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. So yeah, there's that. And then just to kind of, for the fun of it, Charlie Munger, who's been a big Bitcoin fan, I'm being sarcastic if you don't know.
Very big. I'm in
Him and Warren Buffett.
Buffett, yep.
He was quoted as saying, the people who invented this crypto crappo, which is the name for it, sometimes I call it crypto crappo, and sometimes I call it, well, crypto beep. And it's ridiculous that anybody would buy this stuff. He actually gave props to China for banning Bitcoin and kicking it out of the country.
Yep.
There's a big tweet that
you turn Hong Kong into a hub, right?
Yeah, right. Of course. He basically was saying that we needed it. It's evil because it undermines the American dollar system and the Federal Reserve System, and that it undermines the control the government has and can exert over the people, which is all the reasons why I love Bitcoin.
I was going to say, no, those are positives.
I mean,
and anything that enhances the Federal Reserve's control over central bank digital currencies is evil, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I completely agree. CBDCs, man, I'm still like, I think this will be the year for CBDCs, and we got to see. I mean, we got to see what's going to happen. I'm curious. I think a while back we talked about that. Like, I think the framework for the Federal Reserve CBDC in the United States is supposed to be completed in March. But I haven't heard anything further on that. So,
wow, that's really close.
Well, because when you think about it, I think we talked about that like almost a year ago. I think it was in February when the Canadian trucker.
Yeah, when they basically cracked down on the protests.
Yes, yeah. So that protest that was going on, it was back in February of last year, of 2022, and that's when they were talking about like the CBDC frameworks and all those types of things, and they were expecting it to be done by end of Q1 of 2023 in the United States, or at least begin testing and those types of things. So I'm curious if that's going to hold true, if that's going to come to fruition or not. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we talked about that about a year ago. So I don't know. We'd have to go back to listen to our old episode and see.
I don't know. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess.
Yeah, isn't that crazy, man? It doesn't seem like that's been a year ago.
Yeah.
Craziness. But yeah, I mean, we got weird times ahead of us right now. Like, I mean, we still have the halving coming up in almost a year. So, I mean, I've said it before. I would expect under typical normal circumstances that we would start to see Bitcoin rise. And my guess that I put out at the beginning of this year when we started was I think Bitcoin will be between $40,000 to $50,000 by the end of Q4 of this year. Just because it seems like we got to be getting back up to those barn doors of the blowout, right? Like, because we got to go past the all-time high again to really be back in a bull trend. So we'll see. I mean, I could be completely wrong. I mean, whatever the macroeconomic outlook is going to definitely define what that's going to be. So
Definitely. And, I still keep predicting blood in the streets, so we'll see.
yeah, I mean, and this correlation that I brought up earlier in the podcast, I'm kind of curious how that's going to play out, because you would expect, I mean, we're looking at, see, what is the standard markets doing? Dow Jones Industrial, it's up slightly. Apple's down, Tesla's up, Netflix is down, oil's down, gold's up by 0.3%. I'm just kind of curious, like, if this trend continues, like we saw Bitcoin tank right before the CPI numbers were announced. CPI numbers came out, and I think they were still kind of hotter than what most people wanted to see, because had they come in at 6 or something like that, I guarantee we would have blown out a lot higher. And so whenever we saw that kind of spring up, and then the Fed talk about raising interest rates more than what they were planning on doing, we saw it go down a little bit, but then we started to come right back up into this range again. So I'm kind of curious. I don't know if we'll break the $25,000 mark again this week and hold above it. We had two down weeks in a row consecutively after having, a pretty solid run of about probably 4 or 5 weeks of green markets for Bitcoin. I mean, higher weekly closes in a sense. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to play out with this or not.
Though, I mean, it went down to 22 and it seems to be coming back a little bit. So
yeah,
it's not going down too far.
No,
at least it's resisting it.
Yeah, it's definitely resisting it. Like, I mean, when I saw that springboard action happen, that's why I was just like, huh. And then the DXY was showing strength, and it was still going forward like that. And that's not common. That's not usually something that I see happen. So I'm kind of curious. I'm just going to keep eyes on that and see where that goes. So as for what else we have to look forward to, I don't know. I don't think we have a whole lot else coming out this week. Now we're going to kind of wait and see. I think what's going to happen in March, which I can't believe we're getting close to the end of Q1.
Yeah. No, it just feels like it just started. So
yeah. Yep. But anyways, that's all I've got for today. Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up?
That's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. We will talk to y'all soon. Hopefully we'll get recording again this next week.
All righty. Bye.